When making certain sub-object selections, there's a handy little feature in Max called Ignore Backfacing, something you'll certainly want to take advantage of during a normal production workflow. To show you how it works, let's use a file named Ignore Backfacing. You can find it in the Working Files folder. Now, when you make a window selection at the sub-object level, Max is programmed to select any and all sub-object components that are within that windowed area. And that means that a window selection will normally select not just what's on the front of the surface, but also what's on the back. And typically, that's exactly what you want to do. There's definitely going to be other times, though, when you don't want that to happen. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's go ahead and select our object, then head to the Modify column to get into Polygon Selection mode. Now, over in the top view, take a look at the way the lines are laid out on the sphere. You'll see that the edges basically go around in a circular direction. What we're going to want to do is to select the polygons that make up the middle of that sphere. Now, to do that, a rectangular selection is probably not the best way to go. So let's do this. Up on the toolbar, we'll change from a rectangular selection over to a circular one. Now, by the way, we could have also select Q while in select mode, which would toggle us through the various selection window options. Try that real quick. Type in Q and watch the icon change. Now make sure you get back to circular selection. Okay, in polygon mode and working in the top view, let's now position our mouse in the middle of our sphere. As you drag away with your mouse, window select, let's say, 4 or 5 rows of polygons. Let's now activate the Move command and move things around. As you do, you'll notice in all 4 viewports that what you're moving is not just the top of the sphere, but also the selected polys on the bottom. Try scaling the polys in and out, and again take note that you're controlling both the top and the bottom. So that works just fine, but what would happen in a situation where maybe you wanted to select only the front area on a surface, not in any way affecting what might be on the backside? Well, I guess you could just simply make a selection and window again holding down the Alt key to remove the parts you didn't want. Or you could instead simply activate the Ignore Backfacing option that can be found over in the Modify column. Take note up on the toolbar, what's now active is the Select Object mode. Now, something you want to be aware of when making a sub-object selection. Max's Move, Rotate, and Scale commands are designed not just to transform something, but they're actually combination commands that also allow you to select while active in that command. That can be good sometimes, but not always so good while working at the sub-object level. So, not that you always have to return to the plain old Select command when making a sub-object selection. But sooner or later, trust me, you're going to be going to select something and at the same time moving it unintentionally around. You'll see what I mean when it happens. Okay, back to making our selection. Over in the Modify column, in the Selection category, let's now activate Ignore Backfacing. We'll then head back up to the top view, deselecting our currently selected polys. Continuing to use the Circular Selection tool, let's again drag away from the middle of our sphere. Once you've let go of the mouse to complete the selection, take a look inside your views. The only polys that are currently selected are the ones on the top. So Ignore Backfacing has allowed us to ignore basically what's on the back side. Let's again move the polygons around and you'll see the difference that's made. Now controlling the polygons only on the top of the sphere deforms the object in a much different way. Maybe we can now plug all this in into a real-world example that'll drive home how helpful Ignore Backfacing can be. Let's get out of the sub-object mode and delete our sphere. To do that, I'll right-click on the screen, then in the upper left-hand square, go to Top Level. Once I've done that, I can simply hit Delete on the keyboard. Okay, let's go ahead and right-click on the screen again, then in the menu, head toward the top, choosing Unhide All. Let's say that we'd like to redesign this desk. Maybe removing the front drawer in the middle, and then angling the desk blue body so that it's higher in the front, where the drawer was, and lower in the back, giving it more of a contemporary look. We'll start by selecting the blue drawers, which have been grouped together, then right-clicking, choosing Hide Selection. Let's now select the blue body, then return to a rectangular way of selecting. After that, we'll move to the Modify column and enter Vertex mode. Looking in the front view, you'll see the areas controlled by vertices where that original middle drawer was. What we're going to want to do is to be able to select that area. Now, before we do so, we better go back on the right and check into our Ignore Backfacing option. As you can see, currently it's in an off position. So if we window those 2 vertices, in essence getting not just those 2 but the 2 behind it, watch what happens when we then move those vertices down. We're controlling not just the front geometry on the desk, but also the back end, which we don't want to do. So I'll cancel that out while still holding down my left mouse button. Instead, I'll return to the Modify column, activating Ignore Backfacing. This will give me the opportunity of window selecting the very same area in the front view, but this time around only attracting the front verts. In fact, after making that selection, if you look in the left-hand window, you'll notice the vertices on the left-hand side are unselected, those representing the back end of that part of the geometry. Okay, let's go to our perspective view and we'll move the two vertices that we have selected up. Back in the left-hand view, take a look at the angle that we're now creating with that particular part of the surface. Let's now return to the front view, selecting the two vertices that are toward the back of the desk. Now in this situation, nothing else is in front of it, so by keeping Ignore Backfacing on, we'll still be okay. With that selected, let's go ahead and drag this down. Now this is controlling the back part of the desk geometry. Let's get out of subobject mode and we'll orbit around in our perspective view for a closer look. Being that our attempt is to make this desk a little more contemporary, maybe we also want to take the bottom of the desk and flange it out just a tad. Let's do this. Back in vertex mode and working in the front view, let's select the vertices that make up the bottom of the table on both ends. Now you want to be careful not to window select too far up or you're going to grab those two original vertices that now make up that back end that we angled down. Okay, again looking in the left-hand view, it's pretty apparent that I've missed out on those back vertices. And if you look in the Modify column, you'll know exactly the reason why. Ignore Backfacing is still on. So let's turn it off, and back in the front view, we'll make the same selection. Now we've grabbed all 8 vertices, the 4 in the front and the 4 that make up the back. Let's now activate our top view and we'll scale things out. We can then again get out of subobject level and take our perspective view full screen. Now if the Alt-W shortcut combo doesn't seem to be working, which sometimes happens when you're in subobject mode, you may need to drop to the lower right-hand corner of the viewport and click on the Minimize Maximize Viewport toggle. Now when you do, make sure your perspective view is active before clicking on the button. Okay, let's roll back a ways and orbit around. Maybe we'd also like to thin out a little the wide bottom on both ends of the desk. To do that, we'll simply scale a couple polys. Let's right-click to get into polygon mode. Then, holding down the Control key, we can select both polys. Now we can activate Scale, and we'll scale that in the X or red direction. Let's get back out of subobject mode and we'll orbit to get in better position. So there you go with a terrific little option that I'm sure you'll be using in your own work. Just don't forget it. When you're making a subobject selection and only want to grab the front of the surface, use Ignore Backfacing to make the job much easier. I'm going to go ahead and save the file out as Ignore Backfacing completed if you want to look it over.